I've been driving trucks for 10 years now. 10 years of the same highways. The same rest stops. The same bad coffee from the same vending machines. Most people think truck driving is exciting. It's not. It's lonely. It's quiet. And after a while, the road starts to feel like it belongs to you. My route was Highway 51. Chicago down to Memphis. Every single night. I'd leave the depot around midnight. Load checked, paperwork done, coffee in the cup holder. Same routine every time. I could do it in my sleep honestly. The highway at night is a different world. During the day it's just a road. Cars, noise, exits, billboards. But at night, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes yours. Just your headlights cutting through the dark. Just the hum of the engine. Just the white dashes on the road passing under you like a heartbeat. I loved it actually. I won't lie. There's a piece to it that's hard to explain. No phone calls. No people. No noise. Just you and the road and the dark sky above you. I knew every mile of Highway 51 by heart. I knew where the road dipped slightly around mile 180. I knew the old billboard that was half torn near mile 190. I knew the rest stop at mile 195 that always smelled like pine trees for some reason. And I knew mile marker 204. It was the loneliest stretch of the whole route. No exits nearby. No lights. No houses. No nothing. Just flat empty road surrounded by dark fields on both sides. I passed it every night at almost exactly 1:30 in the morning. Nothing ever happened there. It was just a number on a green sign. Just another mile I'd passed 1,000 times. I never thought twice about it. Back then I was the kind of guy who laughed at ghost stories. The older drivers at the truck stops loved telling them. Scary road stories. Strange things they claimed to have seen. I always smiled and nodded. But inside I thought, these guys have been alone too long. The road plays tricks on a tired mind. That's all it ever is. I was practical. Logical. Grounded. My wife always said I was too practical. Said I didn't have enough imagination. She was right. I didn't. And honestly, back then, I was glad for that. I'd get home in the early morning. Sleep till noon. Have lunch with my wife. Watch some TV. Head back to the depot by 10 at night. Simple life. Quiet life. Good life. 10 years of the same thing and I never complained once. Some guys hate the routine. I found comfort in it. Same road. Same miles. Same coffee. Same dark sky. Nothing ever changed on Highway 51. Until it did. It was a Tuesday night. Or maybe Wednesday morning. Around that quiet hour when even the radio starts to feel too loud. I remember I turned the radio down somewhere around mile 190. I was just in one of those moods. Didn't want music. Didn't want talk shows. Just wanted the sound of the road. The night was clear. No fog. No rain. Just cold dry air and a big dark sky full of stars. I was making good time. Everything was normal. I passed the old torn billboard. I passed the rest stop that smells like pine. I watched the mile markers tick by one. And then somewhere around 201, 202, I don't know why, I sat up a little straighter in my seat. There was no reason for it. Nothing had happened. But something in my body just shifted. Like when you're almost asleep and something jolts you awake for no reason. I kept driving. And then my headlights swept across mile 204. There was a woman standing on the shoulder of the road. I saw her for maybe 3 or 4 seconds as I approached. White dress. Dark hair. Standing completely still with her back to me. I slowed down automatically. My foot just moved to the brake without thinking. She wasn't waving. She wasn't holding anything. She wasn't trying to flag me down. She was just standing there. Facing away from the road. Facing the dark field. I slowed to almost a crawl. Part of me wanted to stop. Pull over. Ask if she was okay. But another part of me, a quieter part, said don't. I don't know why. I can't explain it even now. There was just something about the stillness of her. Something about the way she wasn't moving at all. Not even slightly. Like a statue someone had left on the side of the road. I drove past. I checked my mirror immediately. She was gone. Not walking away. Not turning around. Just gone. Like she hadn't been there at all. I stared at that mirror for a long time. Just dark road behind me. I told myself, stranded traveler. Car broke down somewhere nearby. She was probably on the phone when I passed. Probably walked back to her car. Made sense. Perfectly reasonable explanation. I kept driving. But the coffee in my hand tasted different after that. I couldn't tell you how. Just different. At the rest stop in Tennessee I pulled in around 3 a.m. There were 3 other trucks parked up. A couple of drivers sitting outside with cups of coffee. I sat down with them. Made small talk for a while. Then casually, very casually, I mentioned it. Saw something a little strange back there around mile 204. A woman standing on the shoulder. Middle of the night. Didn't seem like she needed help. 2 of the guys barely reacted. One said probably a hitchhiker. The other said he'd seen stranger things. But the third guy, older fellow, gray beard, had been driving this route longer than me. He just went quiet. He didn't say anything. Just looked down at his coffee. I noticed. But I didn't push it that night. I figured he was tired. I told myself I was tired too. I finished my coffee, got back in the truck, and drove the rest of the way to Memphis without thinking about it again. Or at least, I tried not to. The next night I almost took a different route. I had this small feeling in my stomach when I was loading up at the depot. Nothing big. Just a quiet nudge. Like forgetting something but not knowing what. I ignored it. Highway 51 was my route. Had been for 10 years. I wasn't going to change it because of a woman standing on a shoulder. I left at midnight same as always. The drive down was normal. Easy. Light traffic for the first hour, then nothing at all. Just me and the road. I told myself last night was nothing. Just someone whose car broke down. I'd probably passed 100 stranded people over 10 years without a second thought. Mile 198. 199, 200. I turned the radio up slightly. I was gripping the steering wheel a little tighter than normal. I noticed that. I made myself relax my hands. Mile 204. She was there. Same spot. Same white dress. Same dark hair hanging down. Same stillness. But this time, I was slower. More prepared. I looked harder. Her feet. That's what I noticed first. She was barefoot. Standing on asphalt. On a highway. In the middle of the night. No shoes. I don't know why that detail hit me harder than anything else. But it did. It went straight through me like cold water. Nobody stands barefoot on a highway at 1:30 in the morning. I stopped the truck. I sat there for a moment with the engine running. Hazard lights blinking. Looking at her in my headlights. She still hadn't moved. Hadn't turned around. Hadn't reacted to my lights or my engine at all. I opened the door. Stepped down onto the road. The air outside was cold and quiet. No wind. No sound except my engine idling. Hey. My voice came out smaller than I expected. You okay? Do you need help? Nothing. She just stood there. Hair still. Dress still. Completely motionless. Miss? Are you alright? Not even a flinch. I took 2 steps toward her. And then I stopped. I can't explain what stopped me. There was no sound. No movement. Nothing changed. But I stopped. And I stood there on that dark highway for what felt like a very long time. Then I turned around. Got back in the truck. Closed the door. I drove away faster than I should have. My hands were shaking slightly on the wheel. I noticed that. I pressed them flat against the leather and breathed slowly. Just a person. Just someone in shock maybe. Someone who needed help but was too frightened to respond. I told myself to call it in at the next stop. Let the highway patrol handle it. At the rest stop I called it in. Described the location. Described what I saw. The officer on the phone said they'd send someone to check. I never heard anything back. I tried to sleep in my cab that night. Stretched out in the back, stared at the roof. Every time I closed my eyes I saw bare feet on dark asphalt. I called my wife around 4 a.m. just to hear her voice. You okay? She asked, half asleep. Yeah, I said. Just couldn't sleep. Go back to bed. I didn't tell her about the woman. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. 2 nights later I was back at that Tennessee rest stop. I was looking for the older driver. The one with the gray beard who went quiet. I found him sitting alone at the far end of the lot. Coffee in hand. Staring at nothing. I sat down across from him without being invited. He looked at me but didn't say anything. That stretch, I said. Mile 204. You know something about it. He was quiet for a moment. Then he looked away. How many times have you seen her? He asked. Twice now. He nodded slowly. Like that was the answer he expected. I've been driving this highway for 22 years, he said. I saw her 3 times. Long time ago. Then I changed my route. Who is she? He turned his coffee cup slowly in his hands. Years back, he said quietly. A young woman was killed on that stretch. Hit and run. Late at night. Whoever hit her, they just kept going. I didn't say anything. They found her in the morning. Right there at mile 204. She'd been lying in the grass by the shoulder all night. The rest stop felt quieter suddenly. Like the sound had been turned down. They never found the driver? I asked. Never. He shook his head. Case went cold. Nobody came forward. Nobody ever admitted anything. He took a long sip of his coffee. Some of the old-timers say she never left that spot. Say she's still out there looking. Looking for what? He looked at me then. Directly. For the first time since I sat down. For the one who left her there. I sat with that for a moment. You said you saw her 3 times, I said. What happened the 3rd time? He stood up. Picked up his coffee cup. I stopped, he said simply. I stood out there on that road and I said what I needed to say. And then I drove away and I never saw her again. He paused, just for a second. Something moved across his face, not quite peace, but close to it. Some debts you carry. Some you can put down. That's all I'll say. He didn't say anything else. He walked back to his truck and I watched him go. I sat there alone in the cold for a while. Then I got back on the road. But I didn't take Highway 51 that night. I took the long way around. I took the alternate route for 7 days straight. It added almost 2 hours to every single run. I was arriving late. My dispatcher called me on day 3. What's going on, he said. You're behind on every delivery this week. Road work, I told him. Construction on 51. Taking the detour. I haven't heard anything about construction on 51. It's there, I said. He let it go. But I could hear the irritation in his voice. I didn't care. I just didn't want to drive past mile 204. The alternate route was fine during the first few nights. Longer but fine. Different roads. Different mile markers. Nothing strange. But on the 4th night, the dream started. I was asleep in my cab at a rest stop in Kentucky when I first saw her in a dream. She was standing far away. At the end of a long empty road. White dress. Dark hair. Back turned to me. That was it. Just that image. Then I woke up. I told myself it was nothing. Just my brain processing something I'd seen. Normal. The next night she was a little closer in the dream. Still facing away. Still not moving. The night after that, closer still. Each night she was a little nearer than the night before. Like she was walking toward me one step at a time. One dream at a time. I started dreading sleep. Which is not good when you drive for a living. On the 7th night I fell asleep in my cab and she was close. Really close. Maybe 20 feet away in the dream. And then, slowly, she started to turn around. I woke up before I saw her face. Heart going fast. Hands gripping the blanket. Staring at the dark ceiling of my cab. I sat up and turned on every light in the cab. Just sat there breathing. My wife had noticed something was wrong by then. You look exhausted, she said one afternoon when I got home. You're not sleeping. I'm fine, I said. Just a long week. She looked at me the way wives do when they know you're lying but decide not to push it. She reached over and put her hand on mine for a moment. Just that. Didn't say anything else. I appreciated that more than I could tell her. I wasn't ready to explain. And then on day 8, my dispatcher called again. Late deliveries were piling up. The client in Memphis was complaining. If it continued, I was looking at losing the contract. That meant losing my income. Losing my route. Possibly losing my job entirely. I sat in my truck in the depot parking lot that night staring at the steering wheel for a long time. Then I started the engine. And I turned on to Highway 51. The first night back on Highway 51 felt strange from the start. Not in an obvious way. Nothing dramatic happened. The road was the same. The night was the same. But I felt it. That shift again. That same feeling from the very first night. Like something in the air had changed slightly. I drove carefully. Slowly. More slowly than usual. I passed the old billboard. Past the pine-smelling rest stop. Watched the mile markers go by. 198, 199. 200. I turned the radio off completely. 201, 202. 203. And there she was. White dress. Dark hair. Standing still. But different. Before, she had always been standing on the far edge of the shoulder. Almost in the grass. A good 15 feet from the road. Tonight she was standing right at the white line. Right at the edge of the lane. I drove past without slowing down. Kept my eyes forward. Didn't look in the mirror. Drove another 5 miles before I let out the breath I'd been holding. At the next stop I climbed into the back of my cab and pulled out my dashcam. It recorded automatically. Had footage of every mile of every run. I rewound to mile 204. I watched the footage 3 times. Empty road. Empty shoulder. Empty field. Nothing. No woman. No white dress. No figure of any kind. The road in the footage was completely empty. I sat with the camera in my hands for a long time. She wasn't showing up on the recording. Which meant one of 2 things. Either the camera had a blind spot I didn't know about. Or she wasn't something a camera could pick up. A camera records light. Whatever she was, whatever she had become, maybe she was beyond that now. Beyond light. Beyond recording. Something that existed only for the ones who needed to see her. I didn't let myself think too hard about which explanation I believed. I started keeping a small notebook after that. Just a cheap spiral notebook I bought at a gas station. Every time I passed mile 204 I wrote it down. The time. Where she was standing. What she was doing. Any small detail I noticed. First sighting, far shoulder, back turned. Second sighting, far shoulder, back turned, bare feet. Third sighting, edge of lane, back turned. The pattern was simple and it was clear. She was getting closer to the road. One night at a time. Closer. I started paying attention to the other drivers on my route. Quietly. Carefully. I didn't bring it up directly. Just asked general questions. How's the route been lately? Anything strange on 51 recently? That kind of thing. Most guys had nothing. Normal runs. Nothing unusual. But 2 of them, 2 separate drivers who ran the same stretch, had seen her. The first one I'll call the younger guy. He'd only been on the route for about a year. He told me he saw a woman on the shoulder around mile 204 a few weeks back. He stopped for her. I thought she was stranded, he said. I pulled over and got out. She was just standing there. Wouldn't respond. Wouldn't turn around. He paused. I got back in my truck. Drove away. He looked at his hands. The next morning my engine seized. Completely dead. Had to be towed. Mechanic said he'd never seen anything like it. Said it looked like the engine had just given up. He never drove that route again after that. The second driver was older. Quiet man. Kept to himself mostly. He said he'd seen her twice. The second time he'd rolled down his window and shouted at her. Told her to get off the road. He was driving for about 10 minutes after that when his windshield cracked. From the inside. No impact. No rock. No reason. Just a crack that spread slowly from the center of the glass outward like a spider web. I don't talk about that stretch anymore, he told me. Bad luck just to say the mile number. That stuck with me. I noticed that the other truckers who knew, they never said the number out loud. They'd say, that spot, or, that place past the rest stop. Never the number. I started doing the same. Something else bothered me too. More drivers were seeing her now than before. The older driver who warned me, the one with the gray beard, he'd seen her 3 times years ago and then she'd stopped. But now she was appearing more frequently. To more people. Like she was becoming more present somehow. More real. And the old driver himself, I hadn't seen him at the rest stop in over 2 weeks. Nobody knew where he'd gone. I asked around. Nobody had heard from him. I thought about what he'd told me, that he stopped, that he said what he needed to say, that he never saw her again after that. Maybe that's what happened to him. Maybe he'd found whatever peace there was to find and simply moved on. Changed his life. Started over somewhere quiet. Or maybe not. I wrote it down in my notebook and I tried not to think too hard about which answer I believed. Then I drove on. It was 3 weeks after I'd returned to Highway 51. The night started badly. I was tired going in. Had barely slept. My wife and I had argued about something small and stupid and I'd left for the depot in a bad mood. The drive down started fine but by mile 150 I could feel the fatigue setting in. That heavy feeling behind the eyes. That slight blur at the edges of your vision. I stopped at mile 175. Got out. Walked around the truck twice. Splashed cold water on my face from a bottle. Drank the rest of my coffee even though it had gone cold. Got back in. Kept going. Around mile 195 the radio went to static. I turned the dial. Nothing on any station. Just white noise across everything. I turned it off. Mile 198. 199, 200. The night was very dark. No moon. Just my headlights making a small tunnel of light ahead of me. 201. The static from the radio was still in my ears even though it was off. That fuzzy sound you hear after loud noise. 202. I sat up straighter. 203. I slowed down. I don't know why. My foot just eased off the gas on its own. And then my headlights reached mile 204. She was in the middle of the road. Not on the shoulder. Not at the white line. In the middle of my lane. Standing directly in my path. I hit the brakes hard. The truck screamed. Tires locking up. That terrible sound of a heavy vehicle trying to stop too fast. The whole cab shuddering. I stopped. 10 feet from her. Maybe less. And for the first time, I could really see her. The white dress was torn at the bottom. Old damage. Ragged edges. The kind of damage that doesn't happen from one night outside. Her hair was hanging down over her face completely. Not a strand out of place. Perfectly still even though my truck had just thrown up wind stopping that fast. And her hands. Her hands were hanging at her sides. Palms facing forward. Like she was waiting. Then I saw her face. She had tilted her head slightly. Just enough that I could see through the hair. White eyes. No color. No pupils. Just white. Looking directly at me. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I just sat there gripping the wheel. Then she raised one hand. Slowly. Like everything she did was slow. She pointed. Down the road ahead. Straight ahead into the dark. I don't know what she was pointing at. I didn't want to know. I put the truck in reverse. I drove backwards for almost 5 miles with the hazard lights going. I know how that sounds. I don't care. I couldn't make myself turn around. Couldn't take my eyes off where she had been standing. At mile 199 I finally stopped. I picked up the CB radio. Static. Nothing but static on every channel. I sat in that truck alone on a dark highway for almost 2 hours. Just breathing. Just waiting. At 3:50 in the morning I finally crept forward again. Past 200. Past 201. 202, 203. Mile 204. Empty road. Empty shoulder. Empty field. Gone. I drove the rest of the way to Memphis without stopping. Without music. Without anything. I handed off the delivery. Signed the paperwork. Got back in my truck. I sat in the Memphis Depot parking lot as the sun came up. And I knew, whatever this was, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I didn't go home that morning. Instead, I drove to the small town closest to mile 204. Took me about 20 minutes off the highway. Small quiet town. One main street. A diner. A hardware store. A small municipal building. I walked into the county records office when it opened at 9. The woman at the desk was friendly. I told her I was researching an old accident on Highway 51. I gave her the approximate location. She looked through the system. Took a while. Then she printed something out and slid it across the counter. It was an old accident report. A young woman. Hit and run. Highway 51 near mile marker 204. Late at night. The exact spot. The driver was never identified. The case was listed as unsolved. I read it slowly. Read it twice. Then I saw the photo attached to the back of the report. It was a small photo. Like a driver's license or ID photo. Black and white and slightly faded. I looked at it for a long time. Dark hair. A pale face. Young. Maybe mid-20s. The photo was just paper. Just ink printed onto a page. Not a lens, not a sensor, not a recording device trying to capture something that didn't want to be captured. Maybe that's why she could exist in it. A photograph of who she was, not what she had become. It was her. I was certain. The way you're certain about some things without being able to explain how. I had seen that face through the curtain of hair in my headlights. It was her. I folded the report carefully and put it in my jacket pocket. The woman at the desk gave me a slightly odd look but didn't say anything. I walked down the main street and went into the diner. Over coffee I asked the older man behind the counter about the accident. Told him I was passing through and had heard about it from another driver. He was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. Most of the old-timers around here remember it, he said. Young woman. All alone out there on that highway. Nobody knows what she was doing walking that road at that hour. They never found the driver. He shook his head. Never came forward. Never got caught. He refilled my coffee without me asking. Some things just don't get resolved. I left the diner and sat in my truck. I took out the accident report and looked at the photo again. A quiet thought had been forming in the back of my mind since the night before. Since she pointed down that road. Since I saw her white eyes looking directly at me. Not at the truck. Not at the road. At me. I pushed the thought down. Drove home. Didn't sleep. I keep all my old work logbooks in a box in the garage. 10 years of them. Stacked in order. Every run I've ever made documented in handwriting. I'd always been careful about my logs. Old habit from early in my career. Write everything down. Time of departure. Miles. Any incidents. Weather. Delays. I went out to the garage at midnight. I went through the box until I found the right year. The same year as the accident report. I sat on the garage floor under the single bulb and went through it page by page. The dates matched up. I was running Highway 51 that year. Same route. Same schedule. I found the month. Found the week. Found the night. My own handwriting. Neat and small the way I always wrote. Departed depot 11:55 p.m. Highway 51 southbound. Clear conditions. Light traffic. I read further. Mile 190, minor road debris avoided. Mile 204, impact. Checked mirror, appeared to be animal on shoulder. Continued route. No damage to vehicle. Arrived Memphis Depot 5:40 a.m. Delivery completed. I read those lines 4 times. Appeared to be animal on shoulder. I had written that. In my own hand. On that exact night. I had felt the impact. I had checked my mirror. And I had decided it was an animal. And I had kept driving. I sat on the cold garage floor for a very long time. The logbook was open in my lap. The single bulb hummed above me. Everything rearranged itself in my head slowly. Like pieces that had always been there finally sliding into the right positions. She wasn't appearing to random truckers on that road. She was appearing to me. She had always been appearing to me. For weeks she had stood there at mile 204 waiting for me to drive past. Getting closer each time. Moving into my lane. Looking directly at me through my windshield. Not at a truck. Not at a headlight. At me. Because I was the one who had been there that night. I was the one who felt the impact and kept going. I was the one who wrote appeared to be animal and delivered my load and went home and slept. I was the driver who never stopped. I closed the logbook. I put it back in the box. I turned off the garage light and sat in the dark for a while. I didn't feel scared right then. I felt something worse than scared. I felt like I deserved every single thing that had been happening to me. I didn't tell my wife. I couldn't find the words, and I'm not sure I ever will. What do you say? How do you start that sentence? I spent 2 days at home just going through the motions. Eating. Watching TV. Sleeping badly. Waking up at 1:30 in the morning every single night without an alarm. Always 1:30. On the third day I got in my truck. Not for a delivery. I had called the depot and taken the night off. First time in years. I drove to Highway 51. I drove south. Slow and steady. No radio. No coffee. Just the road. I passed mile 198. 199, 200. My hands were steady on the wheel. I noticed that. I expected them to shake. They didn't. I pulled over at mile 204 and turned off the engine. Got out of the truck. The night was cold and very still. No wind at all. No sounds from anywhere. Just that deep highway silence that I had spent 10 years driving through. I walked around to the front of the truck and stood there on the shoulder. And I waited. I don't know how long I stood there. It didn't feel long. It felt like no time passed at all. And then she was there. I didn't see her appear. She was just suddenly there. About 30 feet away. Same white dress. Same dark hair. But this time she was facing me. I could see her face clearly for the first time without glass between us. She was young. Just like the photo. Dark eyes, real eyes this time, not white, just looking at me quietly. Not angry. Not frightening. Just waiting. I took a breath. I was driving that night, I said. My voice was calm. It surprised me how calm it was. I felt the impact. I looked in my mirror and I told myself it was an animal. I stopped. Swallowed. I told myself that because I didn't want it to be anything else. Because stopping meant something I wasn't ready for. The night was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I kept driving. I delivered my load. I went home. I slept. My voice broke a little on that last part. Just slightly. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know it doesn't change anything. But I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I stood there on that dark highway and I cried. I'm not ashamed of that. I stood on the shoulder of Highway 51 at 1:30 in the morning and I cried like I hadn't cried since I was a child. For her. For what I had done. For all the nights I had driven past without understanding. When I looked up she was closer. Right in front of me. Close enough to touch. I could see her face clearly. She was just looking at me. That quiet steady look. I didn't move. She reached out one hand. I closed my eyes. I stood there and I let whatever was going to happen, happen. And then. Nothing. Just the cold air. Just the sound of the highway. Just the night. I opened my eyes. She was gone. The road was empty in both directions. The field was dark and still. The sky above was full of cold stars. I stood there for a moment longer. Then I walked back to my truck. I sat behind the wheel. Put my hands on it. Just breathed. The radio turned on by itself. Soft static for a second. Then a song. Something old and quiet that I didn't recognize. Just guitar and a low voice. I sat and listened to it until it ended. Then I started the engine. I drove home as the sky began to lighten ahead of me. Not south toward Memphis. Just home. I handed in my notice at the depot the next morning. Told them I was done with night routes. Done with Highway 51. The dispatcher sounded surprised. 10 years on the same route. Not easy to replace. I told him I was sorry for the short notice. I wasn't sorry. That evening I sat down with my wife at the kitchen table. I didn't know how to start. I just started. I told her everything. She didn't say anything for a long time after I finished. She just sat with her hands around her coffee cup, looking at the table. Then she looked up at me. I knew something happened, she said quietly. I've known for months. I just didn't know what. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. We figure it out, she said. Together. Okay. I nodded. I couldn't say much else. That was about a year ago now. I do local deliveries now. Daytime only. Home by 6 every evening. My wife is happy about that. I think I am too. I don't dream about her anymore. That stopped after that last night at mile 204. The dreams just ended. Like a door closing quietly. I still think about her sometimes. On early mornings when the light is coming in through the kitchen window and everything feels ordinary and safe. I think about her walking that road alone at night. I think about how it ended for her. I think about the fact that I was the reason. I carry that. I'll carry it the rest of my life. That's how it should be. About 3 months ago I was having coffee at a truck stop diner. Just passing through on a daytime run. A young driver sat down at the counter next to me. Couldn't have been more than a year or two into the job. That look they have, still finding their feet. Still figuring out the road. We made small talk for a while. He mentioned he'd just picked up a new route. Chicago to Memphis. Highway 51. I set my coffee cup down slowly. Good route, I said carefully. You know it well yet? Getting there, he said. Had a weird night last week though. Something I can't really explain. He paused. Looked at his coffee. Around mile 204, really late at night, I saw a woman just standing on the shoulder. White dress. Just standing there in the dark. The diner was warm around us. People talking. Plates being cleared. Everything normal and ordinary. I looked at him for a moment. She was still there. I don't know what that means exactly. Maybe some things take longer to resolve than others. Maybe she had more than one name on her list. Maybe the road holds on to things until every debt has been acknowledged. I paid for my coffee. Put on my jacket. Before I left I turned back to him. That stretch of road, I said quietly. If you see her again, don't look away. Don't pretend it's something else. Don't tell yourself it was an animal. He looked at me. Wanting to ask more. Whatever you've done, I said, that you haven't been honest about, she already knows. I walked out before he could respond. I got in my truck. Sat for a minute looking at the highway ahead. Then I drove. Daytime road. Radio on low. Window cracked. I didn't look in the mirror. Some roads you just have to leave behind you. And some things you just have to live with.